Thanks, Tommy. Thanks, everybody, for attending the session. As Tommy says, I do love photography, and I also love being at the front of concerts. And one of the things that struck me with a lot of the rock concerts that I've been to in probably the last 18 months is towards the end of the concert, the lead singer or one member of the band stands in front of everybody and pulls out their phone and then looks to take a picture. So given my love of photography and the fact that this is the closest I'm ever going to get to having a crowd, I'm going to do the same sort of thing and even use the panoramic mode on my camera to capture you all. One of the other reasons why I'm doing it is because I do feel that to some extent some of you were duped having Professor Merton's name on the agenda, and I hope that you didn't think that you were coming to see him or that you're not here only to see him. And now when I take a picture at the end, I can see who was here and who wasn't by the time you've discovered that he isn't here. Now I was going to start the presentation off with a poll question. I'm told the poll facility is not actually working, so that I wouldn't have been able to do it in any event. But the question went something like this. As we head to this time of the afternoon, how many of you are thinking about the traffic that you might encounter as you leave Sandton? And I thought, well, either you've already started to think about it, in which case you're going to say yes, or if you hadn't thought about it yet, I've now framed the questions that you're definitely thinking about the traffic and probably starting to brace yourself. And what got me thinking about that is that we've always known Sandton was busy. We've seen that it was actually designed to be a feature attraction outside of the CBD by the city developers, but we cannot cope with the traffic. And in fact, things are going to get worse. We've got head offices of major companies going up down the road. Village Walk's about to be redeveloped, and so we see a lot of plans for high-rises and residential and corporate going up, and very little being done to fix the traffic situation. Last month there was an eco-mobility initiative which hoped to try and make traffic a little bit better, maybe bicycle lanes, maybe get people to use public transport. I don't have any official stats, but anecdotally I think it caused a lot more traffic. And so what we have is a band-aid being applied to a situation of traffic. Now when I look to the defined contribution industry and retirement, I think we've got pretty much a similar analogy. What we have is a big movement to defined contribution from defined benefit. The risks are well documented. I'm not going to go through them all. And the evolution in the strategy has been pretty much like eco-mobility. It's putting a band-aid over a sore. Are we really addressing the problem? Or are initiatives real evolutions of what we had, or are they simply bells and whistles? So what I set out to do about a couple of years ago is answer the question on a clean sheet of paper, what should a default investment strategy look like for a DC fund? So I reached out to Professor Merton. I'm not going to introduce him because Toby's already done it. I'll show you that I did actually meet him. I especially wore the same tie so that at least he was here in spirit. And what we look to do is to actually propose a full framework for how should this investment strategy of a DC fund look, and in so doing challenge the status quo. And when I say the status quo, it's the life stage type model, that high equity investment down towards a more fixed income nominal bond or cash component as members approach retirement. And the paper does so by focusing on various areas. In fact, the paper is like little bits of mini essays. Each one of them could have been a little article about things that could potentially change. Not necessarily all of them would have the same impact, but they were things that we thought could have improvement in our retirement system. Now, I can't do justice to a lot of those ideas in the time we have today, so if any of you are interested in the ideas, I'd urge you to read the paper, to download it, to either communicate with me, my email address is at the end, or use Twitter, my handle's @Shaun Levitan, and let the debate go on, because I'm hoping that this paper is a framework or sparks a debate on the way we can do retirement provision in South Africa. So defined contribution is what we have. So what we didn't look to do is to say we yearn for the good old days of defined benefit, or let's put the DB back into DC. It's really looking at the vehicle we have, how could we fine-tune it to better deliver on the needs that the vehicle was always meant to give. Now, the vehicle was for retirement savings. And the actual member's needs of using that vehicle has not changed. Mary was not a member of a defined benefit fund on Friday and then woke up on Monday morning in the DC fund and was a totally different person with different needs. We so often see this particular saying out there, it's 21st century, it's the journey, not the destination. So in the DC world, we look at things like, is it ETF, smart beta, passive, active, did I beat the benchmark, what manager should I have? All of those types of things which are clearly important along the journey. But we actually lose sight of the fact of what the fund is actually meant to do, which is to provide a retirement. So if we don't have the destination, we're not going to actually get there. Or if we get there, it's going to be by chance. So the ultimate objective for these funds is what it has always been, and that is to provide a good retirement. So if we do what we do when we come up with concepts, we Google it. If you Google good retirement, what are some of the images you will see? So that is the first image. It's very much an aspirational view of an old couple sitting on a yacht. I'm picturing champagne over there. But those are the images that as an industry, not necessarily the retirement industry, but as financial services, hold out in terms of what you could see. How many of you are Googling this right now? Good retirement, seeing that image. You don't have to answer. But these are on the front page, the first page. This is what you say when you have good retirement. Well, this is not a good retirement. This is complete mis-selling in terms of the dream, in terms of what you're meant to get to when you get to retirement. A good retirement, or at least we argue, is one in which your standard of living is maintained in retirement. We measure standard of living based on income and by extension consumption. So when Professor Merton was in South Africa last year, he said to me, if I wanted to live here, about how much money would I have to earn every month to be able to provide that car, that house, meat, food, etc. That's how we think. When you go to a new place and you're traveling, you don't say how much money do I need to go off to the States on holiday, more now than what you needed a month ago. But you don't say I need 20,000 rand. You say I need probably 1,500 a day, and that may be, that's a lot less than what you probably need, but per day to cover your accommodation, expenses, insurance, food, etc. We think like that. So the traditional defined benefit funds always had that type of promise. It was an income promise. You knew that if you worked at your employer for 35 years and the accrual rate was 2%, you would get 70% of your income. Almost every retirement system in the world speaks about income, except for DC. Even our state old age pension in South Africa has an income benefit, around 1,400 Rand a month. So if members are used to thinking about their standard of living in terms of income, and the ultimate objective of the retirement fund is to maintain the standard of living, well, we submit that the appropriate objective and goal for a retirement plan is to provide members with a stream of income in retirement. So if we look at our role as actuaries in defined benefit funds, some of the roles include placing a value on the income that pensioners will receive in retirement, and also commenting on the appropriateness of the investment strategy. But the language of defined contribution is completely different. Here, the liability is simply equal to the fund credit balance in respect of each member. So if I looked at the balance sheet of a member in a DC fund, by definition, my assets are equal to my liabilities. So that particular individual is well funded, and their assets are appropriate for their liabilities because we've set them equal to each other. So we have an actuary focusing on the fund credit. We have trustees and members focusing on the fund credit. We have a regulator who has traditionally focused on the fund credit. And so it's not a surprise that members from the earliest stage of a retirement fund, when they very first interact with their savings, the retirement savings, they start to treat their DC savings like a bank account. Each and every time they get a statement, they're shown the change in value of their retirement provision every quarter or year, as often as the statements are provided, with the investment return they have. And so this mimics the type of statement you get when you get a bank savings account. It looks almost within reach. So here's another saying that we see a lot. Aim for the moon, that way even if you miss, you'll be amongst the stars. Well, if you're focusing on fund credits all the time, well, you want that to be as big as possible, and so your strategy will be to grow that as much as possible. But obviously, if you take too much risk, you can fall well short of where you need to be.